All right, everyone, welcome to episode 421 of the All Dolphins podcast. I am joined today by Dave Hyde, award winning columnist for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. How are you, Dave Hyde?
I'm pretty good for considering my football seasons went down the toilet this past weekend. Um,
Yeah, yep.
very. It's always a bad time of the year when that happens.
Yep, we're talking both the Miami Dolphins and the University of Miami Dolphins, University of Miami Hurricanes, because Dave covers the Hurricanes as well as the Dolphins and other sports. I used to cover the Hurricanes way back, pardon me, way back in the day. I still have sort of a rooting interest, and it was very depressing to watch them again fizzle at the end of the season, just like it was depressing to watch the Dolphins, as usual, come up massively short on Thanksgiving night against the Green Bay Packers. Some changes ahead for the game against the New York Jets on Sunday. The return of Bradley Chubb to practice this week, a new number 2 quarterback. Facing Aaron Rodgers, as it turns out, is going to be the case. We'll get into all of that. First, however, we should note today's Monday, December 2nd, which means it's the anniversary, and we bring it up every single solitary year, of the 1985 Monday night victory by the Dolphins against the Chicago Bears at the Orange Bowl by the score of 38-24. And I was scolded one time for not including that in my list of the top 10 Dolphin upset victories in franchise history. My argument always being that, number one, the Dolphins were 8-4
Yeah.
at the time. They were a really good team. Number two, the line was only Chicago by 2. And then number three, Steve Fuller was a starting quarterback that night for the Bears, not Jim McMahon, because he was coming off an injury, though he did get in the game late. I don't recall the circumstance as to why he would have gotten in the game when it was like 31-10 or whatever the score was. But be that as it may, to me, I don't see it as an upset victory. It was just a great game, one of the most fabulous games in Dolphin history, but not an upset. Dave, where were you on
Yeah.
December 2nd, 1985?
December 2nd, 1985, I was in Iowa City, Iowa,
Whoa,
plotting my escape from
there you go.
2 years of covering the University of Iowa, which I enjoyed greatly, but I wanted to get out to bigger. And then 6 months later, I came down here. Wait a second, 85. Yeah, 6 months later, I came down here. Or am I getting my times mixed up? Maybe I came down here. Here's the thing: you get old, the years blend together. But I came the year after the Super Bowl, so was that 85, right?
No,
Yeah.
84.
So
They went the 84 season. They went to the
84,
Super
they
Bowl.
went to the Super Bowl. So I was down here then. I was watching it on TV. I wasn't yet covering the game, but to me, whether it's one of the great upsets or not, it was certainly one of the great games in
Oh,
Dolphin
sure.
history.
Yeah.
Right after the Super Bowls, championship games, for a non-playoff game, it might be number one.
Yeah, it depends what your criteria is in terms of, yeah, it's significance of the victory considering who you beat. Sure, the game was boring. I mean, kind of, sort of, because it was 31-10 at the half. Um,
Yeah, but just there's so many storylines. Dwight Stevenson set the tone of the blocking scheme for the Dolphins that opened the passing game.
mhm.
Um, and then they put Wilbur Marshall on Nat Moore, and Dan Marino ate that matchup up all night. And but you talk to anybody who played in that game. I just talked to Dave Shula recently, and somehow I went to that game, and he talked about it. He goes, I get goosebumps just thinking about that game, and that's sort of the way every Dolphin who was part of that still remembers that night.
Yeah, and the other part that we should mention that's a major factor in the whole aura of that game is the Orange Bowl, which was a crappy, decrepit stadium, but also provided atmosphere much superior to what is going on at this absolutely gorgeous, spectacular, state of the art facility, which cannot duplicate the energy level that was created at the Orange Bowl.
I see. I'm not a follower of that. I believe
Mm.
the moment creates the atmosphere, and there just haven't been enough big moments in Pro Player Stadium. I mean, it's been
Well,
a quarter
players, yeah,
century, of what has gone on there.
yeah, but even at its max, I mean, we're gonna get. I promise, folks, we're gonna get into the nitty gritty right now. We're doing a
We're
little.
we're trying to delay it.
No, we're reminiscing, doing a history lesson slash thing. Even like, for example, the playoff game against the Colts in 2000, it didn't generate that kind of atmosphere. And part of it was the makeup of the stadium itself was like, I mean, you're talking about like aluminum benches, basically. So when everybody
think of it. So where you go right to a playoff win. The last playoff win, it was a wild card game.
Sure,
it was a nice atmosphere. It was a nice atmosphere for a wild card playoff game, but you can't compare that to the Orange Bowl at its best moments, because the Orange Bowl's moments were so superior and so much more electric than that.
Okay, fair enough.
So take that.
Whoa, damn, fine. Okay. Well, but I'm going to counter with also, I think you had more pure football fans at the Orange Bowl than you do now, which is more a bit of a corporate outing or stuff like that. So anyway.
Yeah, times have changed. Yeah.
Yes. And the shame of it in that 85 season is the Dolphins had a chance to produce a rematch in the Super Bowl. They hosted the New England Patriots in the AFC Championship game at the Orange Bowl and got beat 31-14, a turnover fest. And then the following year, and then there's a point here, relates to the current Dolphins. And then the following year began a streak, I have my notes here, of 6 consecutive seasons without a playoff appearance, without a AFC East title. And I bring that up because now we're officially at 16 currently after the Buffalo Bills won last night to clinch the AFC East title for the 5th time. The Dolphins have won one AFC East title since 2000, since the start of the 2001 season, because basically the New England Patriots and with Tom Brady and the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen have been bogarting those AFC East titles. And until Josh Allen leaves the division, they're going to enter every season as the favorites. And sure. I believe, unless I'm severely mistaken and senility is hitting me very, very quickly, I said before the start of the season, you're crazy if you're dismissing the Bills just because they lost a lot of big names in the offseason. And
I was one of those who said Josh Allen can only carry this team so far, and I was wrong. And the Bills have built a nice foundation to win tough games. Look at the game they won. And San Francisco isn't the opponent they were a year ago, but there was no doubt from the start who was a better team last night in those elements. And so they built a tough team. Now, they might be the team with the fewest vulnerabilities in the AFC. I think the NFC right now has the 2 best teams, Detroit and Philadelphia. But Buffalo, year after year, they're doing what New England did. And to your point, the one time the Dolphins won the AFC East, 2008, was when Tom Brady got hurt. And so, when Tom Brady was on that run, I remember talking to a Dolphin official, is the race is on now in the AFC East, who can get the successor? When Tom Brady starts to age, can we get a quarterback to take over? And Buffalo got that guy, and everybody is still chasing.
Yeah, and I want to address that point. Great little trivia tidbit right here. I put that on Twitter earlier today. Since the start of the 2001 season, the only quarterback who has started for an AFC East champion other than Tom Brady and Josh Allen is Chad Pennington. Did it with the Jets in 2002, Dolphins in 2008. And you mentioned what happened is the Bills got Josh Allen. And this is why I'm going down a dangerous road here. It's going to piss off some people. Oh, well, that's what I do. This is why I was advocating in the offseason to have Tua play on the 5th-year option, because I was concerned about how high is the ceiling. And it's certainly not what happened at Green Bay. That's changed my mind. And the pushback you always get is, who else are you going to get that's better? Well,
I don't like that.
Hold on, Dave. It may not be immediate, but shouldn't the goal be to try to get that guy, that Josh Allen, that Patrick Mahomes? And if you're saying, well, you have to have the 1st or 2nd pick to get that guy. Last I checked, the Chiefs had the 28th overall pick in 2017. 2017. They traded up to 10 to take Patrick Mahomes, and I think it's worked out pretty well for them. So again, go ahead. No, go ahead, and I'll come back.
No, I was going to say three best quarterbacks in the AFC right now. All were traded up by teams. Mahomes, as you mentioned,
Hmm.
Josh Allen, Buffalo traded. The Dolphins had a shot. Buffalo was sitting 12, Dolphins sitting 10, and Dolphins didn't want them. Buffalo jumped them and took them at 7. And then Lamar Jackson, 31st pick in the draft. Baltimore traded into the first round and got him. So the hard thing, the first thing to get a franchise, you have to be able to recognize them, and that's the hardest thing, developing them, but starting with recognizing them, and the Dolphins haven't done a very good job of that.
No, and again, you mentioned Buffalo was 12-7. It doesn't have to be 1, 2, or 3. I mean, it can happen. And again, this is not to say that Tua hasn't been good. Tua's been good. Again, what's the ceiling? And this is what we saw against Green Bay. And I have a lot of fans on social media. I shouldn't say a lot of fans. The same very supportive faction, supporters of the quarterback more than the team, who will just look at his numbers. What was it, 37 for 45, 365 yards, 124 passer rating, or 118, whatever it was. Awesome. Look at the numbers before the score got to 27-3. Okay, it wasn't there. No, they didn't lose the game because of him. But again, at a moment where you need elevation from the quarterback position, it just wasn't there.
Yeah, no, and you know, all those numbers were padded by the end of the game. Tyreek Hill, 3 catches for 16 yards, I believe, through 3 quarters. He ended up with 85 yards and a touchdown, that deflected touchdown. So if you just look at the number, Tyreek had an impactful game. No, he didn't. He just didn't. And I'm that's not to blame. It's just telling you what defenses are giving. John Smith, you go and beat us. We'll give you those 8-yard passes, and you try to work your way down the field. But we're not going to let the big run, because against a good defense, what they're telling the Dolphins is, you try those 10-play, 12-play drives. We're going to have a good enough player at some point to disrupt that drive, and that's exactly what's played out. So there's a lot of fool's gold on that 3-game winning streak. What did it mean? Well, you go to a good game, a good team, that was a rough atmosphere to play in. But they didn't even compete. Was a problem.
No, and they were like overmatched. And probably the place where it was most flagrant was the defensive line, the offensive line, which was really exposed. I know a ton has been made about the 20 missed tackles, a lot of it in the open field, because if you look at the Green Bay rushing numbers, I think they had a 23-yard gain, I want to say, on an end around by Jaden Reed. Outside of that, they contained Josh Jacobs. The one play where Josh Jacobs really hurt the Dolphins with a little dump off where he turned what should have been like a 5-yard gain into a 49-yard gain. So I think, I don't know if maybe that was, 20 missed tackles is 20 missed tackles. I don't know if I want to say that was overblown, but I think to me where the Dolphins were most exposed was the offensive line. And again, this was a game. Dolphins don't have. You mentioned like the long drives. The problem is the more plays, the more chances for mistakes or bad plays, negative plays. And the Dolphins don't have the 30-yard capabilities anymore, the 40-yard regular play to bail them out of those. And if you look, the Jonnu Smith unnecessary roughness penalty where you shove the guy in the face. Dude, you've been in the league 7 or 8 years. You should know. But the guy pushed you in the chest. Push him back in the chest. The second you go to the helmet. First and goal from the 9-yard line. The first one, not the second time. The first play is like an end around to Devon Achane. Packers
Right.
not cool. They stay puts a 6-yard loss. Then you're second and goal from the 15. You're in a hole. Holding penalty. Couple of sacks. They just it was mistake after mistake. And with the long drives, when you have that kind of a setback play, it's tough to overcome.
See, there's a lot of places to question, okay, where the Dolphins are. The numbers are so stark that against playoff teams and non-playoff teams that you can't dismiss this stuff. Okay, this is who they are. Now, why is that? Is it coaching? Look, this is a soft team. Again, Jordan Brooks came out in the locker room. Ryan Fitzpatrick came out saying this in their DNA. They just don't compete against in tough games. And so they're lining up. There's a long line of people who have called the
Mhm.
Dolphins soft in the past year, and not media, guys inside the locker rooms. And so there's that you can blame. There's the offense itself, which is a cute offense without the ability to go muscle on muscle. But to me, where I go and where I start, because all those are valid, those are valid discussions. Where I start is so they're 1-11 on the road against playoff teams in the past 3 years. They're what's the number? 0-12 in the cold and I wrote a column on this. I mentioned it today that every one of those games they've been the underdog
Mhm.
by Las Vegas. In other words, nobody's looking at the Dolphins and saying, "Boy, they got a really nice team that can go on the road and win these games." There's not that thought. It's the opposite. No, they're not good enough. So it starts where it always has with the Dolphins for the past quarter century with personnel, with drafting, with investing, with building a team and a roster. And until they realize that, and then we're just going to be spinning our wheels here.
Yeah. Yep. Unfortunately, yeah. And then the next test is against the playoff type opponents is at Houston because they're playing the Jets on Sunday. Logically, this is a game where they're going to look good, and it's going to be like, wow, man, they can be real good when they're good. And then they're going to play at Houston, and it'll be back again with the narrative: can they beat a good team? Although the weather,
I'm not. Houston isn't that good. Houston's 3-4, and a lot of that's against the NFC South. 3 or 4 since like mid-October, early October. I forget the date.
playoffs.
And they're not the team that you thought they would progress into at the end of last year.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm not saying they're. You know who they are? They're the LA Rams. That's who. An okay team. If you play well, you should be able to beat them, and if you don't, you're going to get beat. So, but that's the toughest the Dolphins have out, and that's the real shame of this season. Their schedule is set up for them to have a really good year, and um, and so here we are at 5-7, saying, can they run the table? To me, they've shown you who they are. There's no okay. We can sit here and debate if they get the 10 wins and they get the 7th playoff seed, where do they go then? Maybe they can get a run. I'm not playing that game anymore. They had a second chance to get back into the season in Green Bay and didn't even come close.
No, they keep letting us down. And as I told, I don't know who it was. I told it might have been Omar when he was on yesterday that I raised my hand as one of those who like drank a little bit of the Kool Aid. I was like, you know what? They looked. Maybe there's something different this year. Why? Why? Because it's happened every year. Is it going to happen again this year? Because it is apparently. It's
I keep falling for it
oh,
too.
I
I
do
keep
too.
falling. After Arizona, I said the clock struck midnight on the season. They won 3 in a row, and I said, okay, they've given themselves a second chance, a second life to get back into the season, and then they confirm who they are. So that's there's no fighting it. As Bill Parr says about a player, if a player keeps telling you who he is,
Mm,
at some point believe him. If the Dolphins keep showing you in these games who they are, you got to believe them at some point.
what is it? If it doesn't bark as a puppy, it's not going to bark when it's grown up. Um, and to me, I don't. I think I bought. I guess I bought too much into the game at Buffalo. It's like, yeah, they lost, but I mean, they played the Bills even, and the Bills are really, really, really good. So I was like, okay, I think the next step is getting over that hurdle. And I don't think Green Bay is as good as the Bills, and they just did one of those with the Dolphins.
Yeah, but you know what? I agree. I was suckered into that too a little. But 10 of the 12 games, I believe, on Sunday were decided by a one score or less. That's just the nature of the NFL. So the Dolphins playing teams tight, losing to Arizona, playing them tight. Oh, they're right there. Playing Buffalo tight. At some point again, they don't have that moxie to win consistently in close games. And yeah, their season was thrown up for grabs when Tua got hurt. But what's his record as a starter now? He's 4-4. So I mean, you got to you can't just keep dodging the truth if you're the Dolphins, and it's the point is their team just isn't good enough.
No, that is true. You mentioned Tua getting hurt. That was week 2 against Buffalo, which leads me to the big news item of the day on Monday. Well, no, the biggest news item is Bradley Chubb and Cameron Good returning to practice, but we'll address that later because there's not that much of a discussion to be had there. It's great. Don't expect too much too soon. Very pretty much it. Mike McDaniel said Tyler Huntley, activated from the IR before the game against the Packers on Thanksgiving night, is going to be the backup to Tua against the Jets. As I wrote on Miami Dolphins on SI.com, basically shut the door. It's over. Skylar Thompson experiment is over. And again, it just put out in a big marquee, flashing lights, the Dolphins messed up like nobody's business in the offseason with the backup quarterback spot.
They messed up the last 2 off seasons. They spent money on Mike White, and for whatever reason that didn't work out. And they had Skylar Thompson there, and he didn't work out. And so, they're fortunate too that they weren't called on to bring in Skylar Thompson in the last 6 weeks or so, because they obviously don't have any faith in him. And so you go look, Tyler Snoop has shown he can play. Now I'm sure he was thrown into an impossible situation. I'm talking as a backup.
Yeah,
he can play as a backup. I'm not starting quality, but he showed in Baltimore, and he was thrown in an impossible situation here in this offense to learn on the fly. But they're going to have some. There's going to be a lot of discussions in this Dolphin off season. One of the important ones will be what are they going to do in the quarterback room.
Yeah, and again, as I've said all along, Tyler Huntley is a solid backup quarterback if he's in Baltimore, where the offense is centered around the running game and they can call a lot of design runs for him, and he can operate it and make it look good. For an offense that relies on quick timing and accurate short and intermediate throws, Tyler Huntley is not it, with all due respect. His passer rating for his 3 games with the Dolphins in October and late September was 73, which is brutal. So again, to me, this goes back to, again, Mike McDaniel, you needed to do a better job to tweak your offense a little bit because of what you had with Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley, who A, don't have the same skill set as Tua, B, do not have the 1,000 practice reps with the wide receivers where Tua can almost close his eyes and know where the guy's going to be. Okay, that comes with, there's a reason the Dolphins' timing is so good when it's clicking. And part of it is Tua's very good at that. And on the part of it is there's a ton of practice reps involved in that. And even Darrell Bevel, the QB coach, mentioned that at some point this year. Well, if you don't have Tua with the 1,000 reps and you have 2 other guys who haven't gotten those reps, tweak. This is where Mike McDaniel's a bright guy, and he's certainly got the reputation. There should not be the kind of drop-off there was. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. Because if you look at some other teams, I mentioned in my column, Jordan Love to Malik Willis. They won 2 games with Malik Willis, who basically was a busted draft pick in Tennessee that they shipped away for, a 7th-round pick. And then in Washington, also, Jaden Daniels missed a game, and his backup, was Marcus Mariota. Completely balled out this one game. Marcus Mariota was the guy the Dolphins should have signed instead of sticking with Skylar Thompson and Mike White. Thoughts?
So the question becomes: do you go to a veteran, or do you invest in a 1st-round pick as a quarterback? For that's going to be, and that's it's hard to answer right now because you don't know where the Dolphins are drafting, what's the thought on all these quarterbacks are, but that's going to be one of the major questions in the offseason. And above that, who makes that decision is going to be the big question.
You know who's making that decision, Dave. Come on. Don't tease.
I'm just going to play the game. General manager for life. At some point, though, Steve Ross has got to look at it and say, what was his line when they went to tank? He said he brought the was it the Einstein line about uh, idiocy is repeating the same
And
thing over and
expecting
over
a
again.
different result.
And okay, well, how many times we're going into we would be going into year 7 as GM here, and year 10 as GM, year 7 as head of football operations, and so, but you keep doing whatever you want to do. It's your team.
Except this is the caveat that I always throw in there. Again, when Brian Flores was fired, there's you remember the whole spiel about we want collaboration, we want guys working together, and the Calais Campbell story with all the flavors and the details. I mean, there was another juicy one coming out late last week. Well, the great nugget is Mike McDaniel stepping in and saying, "No, I don't want you to trade him." And Mike McDaniel, when he was asked about that, kind of not denying it that he kind of had a say in it. So therefore, again, how many of the decisions are? And I know everything ends with Chris Greer. He's the GM, but if the decisions are made in collaboration in the spirit of everybody working together, then why would Greer be the fall guy and or not McDaniel? And McDaniel's not going anywhere if Tua is here, and Tua is here because his contract has him tied to him for at least the next 2 years.
Then why have a general manager? What's the point? You just have a super scout. If he's not going to bring in 20 years of working inside the NFL and looking at the quarterback room and saying, "Hey, I get it that you like Skylar Thompson, but we're not staking our careers to Skylar Thompson if it comes to that." Okay, or oh, who cares about the interior of the offensive line? Well, you see what's happened, and you go up to Green Bay. You need to run the ball. You need to have a stout middle. They got destroyed in the middle. Okay, and so it makes no sense to me some of the stuff that has been going on around here. But this is, you know, yes, there's collaboration. There's not dysfunction, and that's the one thing I do give them because we've been around a lot of dysfunction on this team as it starts to fall apart. The GM and the head coach have issues, and look, there's going to be friction. Okay, and McDaniel said that he threw a adult tantrum when they wanted to cut Clay. As he should. Why would you cut a guy who's helping you win?
Not cut it. Not
Who's
cut
a
it.
lead?
Trade him. It's
Oh,
trading.
excuse me, trade. But why would you let go in any for a 5th round draft pick? And that's not going to do anything to fourth.
Hold on. This is where I'm going to get to. There were new details. I don't know if you caught
I
up.
didn't. I haven't got the new details.
Okay. As documented on Miami Dolphins on SI.com. Jared Campbell was a former University of Miami defensive back who is Calais' brother, appeared on a podcast by a gentleman name of Mike Lenosi, who is a comedian, big Dolphins fan. And they basically ended the show with, I'm going to give you some news here. And he basically broke down, as told to him by Calais Campbell, the play-by-play basically of the NFL trade deadline, where apparently they got up to like 9 teams who were making an offer. Mentioned Arizona, Washington, Chicago, Cincinnati, Baltimore, San Francisco. Those are the teams mentioned by name by Jared Campbell on the podcast. And then he basically said Dolphins had decided, okay, well, we'll send him to Baltimore. He's got familiarity there for a 2026 5th-round pick. This is reported by Ian Rappaport. 49ers jumped in and said, no, we'll go ahead and give you a 4th. At which point, apparently, this is when Mike McDaniel jumped in and said, no, I don't want you to trade him because we're not giving him.
Regardless, at 2-6, they still had inside the team a belief that they should have anyways. Okay, we can turn this around.
Yes.
Because if you don't have that belief, what's the whole point? It's one thing for you or me to say, boy, they got a steep hill to climb, and I don't think they're going to get this. It's another inside the room. And to throw Calais Campbell away for I don't care, 4th-round pick, 5th-round pick, whatever. That's the larger point there. You're telling everybody in the room, we're done.
Yep.
Okay, you can't do that. You just can't do that, and unless it's for a 1st round. You keep going up. At some point, okay, you would do it, but not for a 4th or 5th round pick. at that point. So
Mhm.
how Chris Greer, look, I get Chris Greer, he's a GM, you entertain offers, but how it ever got to the point where McDaniel had to shut it down is the bizarre part of the story to me.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get Mike Chris Greer's perspective, but he won't want to address the media until after the end of the season, a couple of days after when we do the season recap. I would hope the Dolphins, if they do at some point become mathematically eliminated with however many weeks left in the regular season, would do the guy a solid, waive him, see if he can hook up with with a playoff contender, give him a chance to chase the ring before he's done.
Hey! He might get Baltimore too, because Baltimore might be the low. They're down to 8-5 now. They lose another one, they might be the last seed for the playoffs, and they could get Calais Campbell yet. So
They
the
might.
problem is the Dolphins mathematically. The problem in this discussion will probably mathematically be alive right to the end of the season.
You think so? You're very early outlook. You haven't went beating the Jets. But by the way, and then I repeat, the Jets announced today, or Jeff Ulbrich, the interim head coach, that he is sticking with Aaron Rodgers despite like some calls for like bench the guy's ass because he's not playing particularly well. And he keeps throwing players under the bus. And then yesterday they were up 21-7. He's got Garrett Wilson wide open in the end zone, overshoots him by 5 yards. Next play, he basically stares down Wilson in the middle of the field. It's a pick six the other way, and that completely turned the game around. So we're both got him winning that game, right?
Yes, and how will they do I have them winning there.
At Houston.
I mean, I think they should win. I mean,
Oh, really?
I'm not impressed by Houston. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I see that.
I'll say 50-50 coin flip. I don't know about that one. San Francisco is a shell of what it was, especially defensively.
Dude,
They're not a good team.
You got 5 studs on defense who are on IR. I mean,
yeah, right. They're not. So, and then what? Cleveland. Cleveland's a wild card. They might have a good game or just be the pits of the world. And who knows?
It's going to be cold.
Yeah. Then you play the Jets again.
At the Jets.
Here's my point. Since tanking is part of the narrative of the Dolphins, since we're using the word narrative, if I was the Jets, now's the time I can ethically tank. Okay, I can ethically tank if I'm and go for a high draft pick, go for a Shedeur Sanders or something like that. And that's what, at the end of a year, you can tank. At the start of a year, in the offseason, you don't plan to tank. But if your season is going so far south, at some point you say, you know what, let's pull the plug and reconfigure it and get one of the top quarterbacks in the draft.
Maybe that's what they're doing by sticking with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I mean, Tyrod Taylor. Boom.
You're right. I agree with you. Tyrod Taylor
is a good backup.
He would be. Yeah, he could come in and win some games.
Yeah.
Good point. And probably 10 other guys on that offense would probably say, okay, let's have an energy boost. Let's pick it up because they can't like playing with Aaron Rodgers.
No. Okay, so basically, based on what you're saying, you're selling hope again. You're selling the hope of a sweep in the season, so the Dolphins would be then 10-7.
Well, sure, they could sweep it out. I mean, they could. I think they'll fall somewhere. I mean, just the odds of winning 5 in a row, even against, maybe the mediocre Houston beats them in Houston. Maybe Cleveland has a good game at home. It's one thing that if it's on the road, Cleveland playing at home in front of the home crowd, they probably don't. So I think somewhere they lose, they go to 9-8, they don't make the playoffs. But if they win, they go to where do they go? Baltimore or Pittsburgh or probably not Pittsburgh. Well, yeah, it could be Pittsburgh.
It would be Pittsburgh, Buffalo, or KC.
Kansas City. They're going to the cold, and they're going. Kansas City is a team waiting to be beaten in the playoffs right now. whether they turn it out. But there's other teams. They're physical. There are so many things the Dolphins aren't right now, and so what are we talking? The door prize is a seventh round seed in the playoffs, and you go on the road again, and you paint it as we didn't die on the season. That's the ceiling right now.
And then we need to bring everybody back because if Tua hadn't gotten hurt, who knows where we would have been. Maybe we challenged Buffalo. This is what happened.
Yeah.
I personally don't necessarily see it. I think Houston is going to be problematic because Houston, while I agree with you, has not looked very good. By the way, every time I watch them, CJ Stroud's running for his life with pressure in the middle of the offensive line. It's amazing how many teams I've seen. Like the tackle play is whatever, but like in the middle of the offensive line, it's like, oh my word, is it awful. New England's one of those. The Chargers are one of those. Houston is one of those. Those are the three that really stand out. It's like they cannot protect their passer up the middle. And I think the Dolphins probably might fit in there a little bit too. A lot of the pressure a lot of times comes in the middle. But Houston does have a bye this week. So when the Dolphins get them, they're coming off a bye. They're still 8-5, despite really not having played great football at all. I agree with you there. Okay, we're going to wrap it up with just a quick news update. This is injuries based on Mike McDaniel's media session on Monday. We mentioned Bradley Chubb, Cameron Good will be back at practice on Wednesday. That opens their 3-week window. At any time during that window, the Dolphins can activate them to the 53 after the 3 weeks. So then the Dolphins have to make a call. If they don't activate him, they have to stay on reserve pup for the end of the season. I don't expect that to happen this week, the activation, but my guess would be Chubb would play against Houston or be in the lineup, or the following week, which would be against San Francisco. Cameron Good, maybe not as certain, because again, every time you activate somebody to 53, somebody's got to go. Kendall Fuller still in the concussion protocol, but McDaniel said he was optimistic he'd be able to play against the Jets. Mike McDaniel already pretty much ruled out Cam Smith with a shoulder injury, calling it week to week. If he were to land on IR, it would not shock me, but this is spitballing. And then Kendall Lamb played through an elbow and back injury against the Packers, but McDaniel said he's quote unquote feeling good about where he is in terms of his availability for the Jets game. So that pretty much wraps it up. Any final words, Dave Hyde from the South Florida Sun Sentinel at Dave Hyde Sports?
I just feel like I've been in the same seat saying the same things for so many years on this team. And here we are again. And all the same debates will be starting up. Do they need a major rebuild? Who does the rebuild, et cetera, et cetera. And so, to be honest, I thought this 2-year window they would get over the not winning a playoff game hump. I never thought they were ready. I hadn't seen that they'd contend, but we're not even close to getting over the playoff hump again. The good news, let me say this, is remember Mike McDaniel said 2024 at 24 minutes past the hour he'd set the clock because that was the number of years without a playoff. It's easy to keep track of this. It's 2024, 2020, 25, 2020. It just matches the years perfectly. So it's not hard to keep track. And at 2030, it'll be perfectly starting on the half hour. So something to look forward to.
Jeez, that's depressing. Wah, wah. So it's deja vu all over again and again and again and again. And I'm going to, my last words here before we wrap this up, I promise. And please like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Thank you very much for watching. The Jets clinched yesterday their 9th consecutive losing season. Haven't had one of those since 2015 when their starting quarterback was
2015. I have no idea.
Miami Dolphins beard, great sense of humor.
Oh, Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, he made the tour. He made the tour of.
Yes, he did.
He was a great surprise. Not only that, the talent that he showed as a quarterback and leadership skills, but just his overall professionalism and so he was one of those surprise guys. Pennington was another surprise guy to cover that. Sometimes you get those in this shop.
Yep, I actually have two of my absolute favorites, especially in terms of quarterbacks. Probably my two favorites who came around the Dolphins' way here through the years. So that's it. That's all there is. There is no more, as the late great Jim Mandich used to say. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll be back at this tomorrow when we're going to do Behind Enemy Lines with friend of the show Antoine Staley from the New York Daily News. See you then.